Let me ask you a question. What happens when the perfect plan, the one you've bet everything on, just completely falls apart in the first few minutes? When everything you were promised would happen, doesn't? Well, that was the grim reality on June 6, 1944, a day balanced on a razor's edge between liberating a continent and a total historic disaster. See, this isn't just a story about a battle. It's a blueprint for what happens when leadership is literally the only thing you have left. All right, let's get into it.
You know, that's not from a movie. That's the raw, unfiltered account from someone who was actually there. On a stretch of sand called Omaha Beach, the idea of a quick victory had just vanished, and in its place was this absolute certainty of death. The English Channel was literally turning red. This wasn't a battle that was just going poorly. This was annihilation in progress.
All right, so Section 1, the perfect plan collapses. And believe me, collapses is putting it mildly. The men hitting that beach had been told a very, very different story. But what they walked into was a total failure of planning, of intelligence, of everything.
Just look at this breakdown. It's unbelievable. The plan was that the naval bombardment would leave all these craters on the beach for cover. The reality? The bombs landed way too far inland. The beach was as flat as a parking lot. The plan said they'd be up against tired, second-rate German troops. The reality? Well, the battle-hardened 352nd Infantry Division, we're talking veterans from the Russian front, had just moved in. And those secret weapon amphibious tanks that were supposed to give them cover fire? 27 of the first 29 sank like stones in the rough seas. I mean, it was a perfect storm where absolutely everything that could go wrong did. And this number? This is the result. In just the first 2 hours, 120 minutes, 2,400 casualties. That is 20 men falling every single minute. You do the math. At that rate, the entire invasion is over before it even really begins. The entire war in Europe was hanging by a thread on this tiny strip of sand.
So, into this complete nightmare, this vortex of chaos where the chain of command has been shredded and men are just paralyzed with fear, one man steps ashore, and he is the absolute last person you'd ever expect to see in a place like this.
Meet Brigadier General Norman Cota, 51 years old, and here's the kicker. He was the guy who, a year earlier, had argued that this exact kind of daylight assault was basically a suicide mission. His warnings were ignored, and now here he is, wading ashore into the very disaster that he predicted. Just imagine the weight of that. It's his job to fix the catastrophe he knew was coming.
And what he saw, it wasn't just physical destruction. No, it was a complete psychological breakdown. You have leaderless survivors just huddled behind this little seawall, not fighting, just waiting to die. Their guns are jammed with sand, their officers are gone, and their spirit, it's just been extinguished. In their minds, the battle was already over. They had lost.
And this is the moment. This is the turning point. Cota sees this paralysis, and he does something that makes absolutely no logical sense. He stands up. While bullets are whizzing by and shells are exploding, he just stands up straight and starts walking down the beach. It was such a crazy act of defiance against reality that his own aide thought he'd gone insane. But it was a calculated move. It was a pattern interrupt. He was showing them a different reality was possible.
Now we're at Section 3, Rangers lead the way. Cota knew right then that maps and grand strategies were useless. The only weapon he had left was to reignite the will to fight in men who already thought they were dead. And he did it, one person, one challenge at a time.
I mean, listen to that. It's not just some dark joke, it's psychological genius. He's not selling them false hope, he's validating their reality. He's saying, yes, you were right, we are all probably going to die. But then he gives them their power back. He gives them a choice. You can die right here, helpless, or you can die on your feet, moving forward like a soldier. It's a powerful way to turn victims back into warriors.
And when he finds the elite 5th Ranger Battalion also pinned down, he doesn't yell at them, he doesn't give them a complicated order, he gives them a challenge that cuts right to the heart of who they are. Rangers, lead the way. With just those 4 words, he's reminding them of their identity, their pride, their elite training, and boom, that phrase, born in that moment of desperation, becomes their motto forever.
And here's the thing, he didn't just talk. He led from the absolute front. He didn't just tell some captain how to take out a machine gun nest. He grabbed a squad, crawled with them under fire, and showed them exactly how to do it. Then he came back and basically said, okay, I showed you, I shared your risk, now it's your turn. He wasn't just giving orders, he was creating more leaders.
Okay, Section 4. The tide turns. And these little moments of courage, they weren't happening in a vacuum. They started a chain reaction. It was like a psychological wave of courage started to sweep down the beach, pushing back that massive tide of fear.
Can you just picture that for a second? You're lying in the sand, absolutely terrified, sure that you're about to die, and this general just strolls up, calm as can be, like he's at a garden party. His total lack of panic was the antidote to their terror. It sent this unbelievably powerful message: the situation is under control, we can do this. And little by little, the men started to believe him.
And then Cota himself leads the very first charge that makes it off the beach. Think about the power of that image. You're a young, tough ranger, and you see this 51-year-old man charge right past you, straight into the enemy guns. Just like Sergeant Richardson said, what else could you do but follow him? His courage basically shamed them and inspired them into action all at once.
This, right here, is the essence of it. His leadership was personal. He walked right up to individual guys, looked them right in the eye, and gave them a simple, clear purpose. He wasn't yelling into a megaphone at a faceless crowd. He was talking to one man at a time. And as this quote says so perfectly, I mean, how do you say no to that? And that was the tipping point. The second Cota's group got through, it shattered the myth that the bluffs were impossible to take. And hope, which is so much more contagious than fear, it just spread like wildfire down the line. The message was simple: it can be done. And that one idea was enough to get thousands of men back on their feet and moving. So let's look at how this all added up, because this massive psychological shift created real, measurable results, and it happened with incredible speed. The total disaster of the morning was about to become a victory by the afternoon. At 6:30 in the morning, the situation was absolute failure. Not one single American soldier had made it off the beach. The invasion was dead in the water. Defeat was just moments away. Now look at this. Just 2.5 hours later, after Cota got to work, more than 600 men were at the top of the bluffs, pushing inland. From 0 to over 600. That right there is the Cota effect. And it's one of the most incredible turnarounds in military history. And this timeline just shows how fast that first spark became a roaring fire. Cota's charge at 7:50 a.m. made the first crack in the German defenses. By noon, that crack was a floodgate. And by evening, the beach that was a killing field at sunrise was declared secure. They had literally pulled victory from the jaws of absolute catastrophe.
But the story of what happened that day at Omaha is about so much more than just a battle. What Dutch Cota did that morning gives us a timeless blueprint for leadership, not just in war, but in any crisis, where everything's on the line and people are frozen by fear.
So, what's the takeaway for us? Well, here's the blueprint. Cota proved that every plan has its limits. Being able to adapt is what matters. He showed that you can't lead from behind a desk. Your people have to see you sharing the risk. He proved that the actions of one single person really can inspire thousands. And maybe most importantly, he showed that in the end, character is the ultimate weapon. It's more powerful than any technology, any resource, or any plan.
You know, in the end, this story leaves us with a question. We all face our own Omaha beaches. They might be in our careers, our families, our lives. Those moments where the plan fails, everything goes wrong, and defeat feels absolutely certain. The lesson from that bloody beach isn't that we're guaranteed to win. It's that victory is always possible if one person has the guts to stand up when everyone else is down, to walk forward when everyone else is frozen. So the question that echoes from that day, it's not really about General Cota, it's about you. When your moment comes, who will you choose to be?